Hola, bienvenidos a Lección 7, which is covering the grammar from the PDF of grammar section in your lesson content for this week. And this section will cover pages 118 to 121. And the topic is En el Centro de Planificación Familiar. So it has to do with family planning. Let's look at our objectives. We're going to finalize our study of stem changing verbs and look at how to conjugate the last set, which is going to be E to I. If you remember, and it was actually Lección 5, we covered E to IE, Lección 6, O to UE, and now the E to I, the last and final set. We're going to begin memorizing irregular first person forms. Again, they're irregular. We've seen some of this in the past, but the ones we'll see today are irregular only in the yo form. And then saber and conocer are part of the irregular first person forms. However, they contrast with one another because they both mean to know. And lastly, we'll discuss some family planning tips. So here we are. Hopefully you're pretty good at stem changing verbs. The E to I happens if there's two E's, it'll be the second E. Be careful with your endings. For example, this is an I or verb. You'll still see the endings that you're used to, like imos and is. All stem changing happens everywhere except nosotros and vosotros. So let's go over the conjugations we have for the verb servir. And just try them with me. Sirvo, sirves, sirve, servimos, servís, sirve. There's going to be a lot of other verbs like this one. For example, pedir, seguir, repetir, conseguir, y decir. So it's interesting that seguir and conseguir, on top of being stem changers, have some spelling changes because if you notice with seguir, there's a U that's already here. And same with conseguir. It's really the same, just putting con in front of seguir. When you conjugate it to the yo, the U will drop. The U will drop and it becomes sigo and consigo. To keep that hard sound of seguir, conseguir, sigo, consigo. If you have a G-U-O, it would be like guo. It would just be a sound that we don't want to make. So just amongst the group of stem changers, consider seguir and conseguir also irregular in the yo. That's a big part of this lesson, honestly. Decir also has something similar. If you see the stem, D-E-C, we're expecting the E to go to an I, but look at the yo form, digo. Okay? So when you're dealing with seguir, conseguir, and decir, the irregulars are, the yo forms are irregular. You have sigo, consigo, and digo. But everything else will follow the stem changing pattern. So for example, let me just tell you the whole conjugations of decir. It would be digo, dices, dice. Decimos, decís, dicen. Let's do a little practice. Well, let's learn a few more verbs and then practice a little. This is finalizing the set that we've looked at. Thankfully, there are no new verbs here. This is just what we've seen thus far. The verbs that we just mentioned a few seconds ago. The E that is in question is highlighted. Sorry about that DAR that kind of just snuck in, but it's the E's that we're bringing your attention to. And the O in question, again, so it's not the E here, but it's the O. And then it's the E in conseguir, the E's that are highlighted, the second E whenever there's a 2E scenario. So I highly recommend you go ahead and conjugate these. Just practice doing your 6-verb chart, and then we will practice that also throughout activities. Okay, so let's pick the verb that is needed to complete the sentence. I'll give you a few minutes. Well, you can have as many minutes as you want because you're the one pausing it, okay? So take as many minutes as you need, but I'm going to show you the answers. Okay, so for number 1, la gente de viajes would be P, consigue los billetes. Y número 2, yo pido la cuenta en el restaurante. All right. Now, speaking of verbs that are irregular in the yo form, let's look at this chart. It's a good amount here. Don't want you to be overwhelmed. Just take them one by one. The good news is that when you're dealing with the verbs on the left, the only conjugation that's irregular is the yo. Otherwise, everything else follows an ER pattern or IR in the case of salir, conducir, and traducir. So I'm going to say the verbs with you, and then we'll go over how you pronounce the first person yo. So try them with me. Salir. Let's do the yo right after. Salgo. Hacer. Hago. Poner. Pongo. Traer. Traigo. Conducir. Conduzco. Traducir. Traduzco. Conocer. Conozco. Ver. Veo. Saber. Sé. Again, irregular for different reasons. We start off with these having G's, and then we have some Z's, and then just two guys doing their own thing. How are you going to use these verbs in sentences? That's a great question. For that, please observe how they're being used throughout the lesson in your ebook. This is just an overview of the grammar for the chapter. Go ahead and pick which verb would complete the sentence for number 1 and number 2. I'm pretty sure you can do this rather quickly at this point. All right, I'm going to go over the answers with you. For número 1, yo traduzco el libro al español. Y 2, ella hace la ensalada. Because hacer is to do or to make. Okay. Next, we'll take a more in-depth view of saber and conocer. This is just an overview, but I do have more examples coming. So both of these verbs, saber and conocer, mean to know. Saber, I always tell people, it's like things you can Google. Something you've memorized, something that you know how to do, so that will be with a verb, very important. Use saber with other verbs to know how to do something. It's a fact that you know, but again, it's something you can look up, define, research. Conocer has to do with an experience. It's a person that you met, a place you've been to, a thing you're acquainted with because you have experienced it. The thing category is a little harder, but otherwise it's knowing a person or a place that, even if you haven't been there, but it's a place you haven't been to then. So if I say, yo no conozco Canadá, I don't, because I have never been to Canada. So I can't say I know Canada. I can be an expert on Canadian history, pero no conozco Canadá if I've never been there. However, I can be familiar and well acquainted with pop music today. So yo conozco la música popular de hoy. So the thing category is a little more gray, but just try to focus on the other areas like saber is facts and verbs, because that's going to be a little more obvious. So let's see, just what we discussed, but with a little more examples. Saber is used to express knowledge of information, like we said, facts. But I wanted you to see some examples. ¿Sabes qué hora es? Do you know what time it is? And we can use it to express knowledge of a skill, so we'll be using it with a verb in the infinitive. For example, Anita sabe cocinar. Anita sabe bailar. Anita sabe hablar español. See? So you can use any conjugation of saber with an infinitive to express what someone knows how to do or doesn't know how to do. Let's say you don't know how to drive. Then I can say, tú no sabes conducir. And then conocer is used with, again, nouns, a person, place, or thing, but it has to do with the familiarity. Think of the word experience. Ejemplos. Marta no conoce a Pedro. She never met Pedro. She doesn't know him. That's the idea, that she never met him. It's knowing a person. Mis tíos conocen bien la ciudad de Madrid. If I tell you that they know well the city of Madrid, that means they've been there. That's what we're saying in Spanish. So just again, a recap of what we're looking at. Saber contrasted with conocer. I want you to really, guys, if you never paused before, pause here. There are 5 sentences. You're going to use saber o conocer, and the next slide has the answers. So please take your time and fill in each one slowly, carefully, thinking about what you're doing, because I'm going to go over the answers right now. So pause here, por favor. Okay. Why is it yo sé que tenemos una cita? Because that's just information or fact. Los pacientes no conocen al doctor. They don't know the doctor. They haven't met the doctor yet, is the idea. Paco sabe quiénes son los mejores dentistas. You can look up a review online and find out who are the best dentists. Doesn't mean you met them in person. Doesn't mean they're your dentist. But you can know this because you can know who they are. Doesn't mean you know them, but you know of them. Sabes quiénes. When you see interrogatives, a lot of times that's saber. Sabes dónde. ¿Cuándo? ¿Quién? Those are question words. Jaime conoce a un especialista de la piel. He knows a dermatologist. That's what the sentence is telling me, so I know that Jaime has met him. Y nosotros no conocemos la ciudad. We really are not well acquainted with the city. We've never been there. We've never driven around there. We have no experience with the city is the idea. So hopefully you did well. Again, try it. Don't look at the answers. Try it again to see how you've done. But here are your responses. So just a quick conjugation. Which one would you pick to complete the sentence? Okay, so they're both grammatically correct. But the first one would be yo sé manejar, because it's using it with a verb. I know how to do that. It's a skill. And number 2, conocemos la embajada de España. It's a place. It's knowing a place. Remember, conocer is knowing a place or a person and being well acquainted with a thing. That's not a fact. That's just a place you can visit and know on your own through experience. Okay, so lastly, we just have really a section on family planning and just some vocab that I would like you to study through your ebook, but I just wanted to highlight it for you here. So take a time, look through it, see what you need. And then let's do a quick knowledge check. If you have a patient who is experiencing infertility, what would you tell them? And number 2, your patient does not want to have children, what recommendation would you give him or her? Okay. Pause and please decide based on the information you have here. And I'm going to go over some suggestions with you. You could always tell a patient who's experiencing infertility, los bebés concebidos a través de FIV. La inseminación artificial es otra opción. And if you don't want to have children, you can recommend una ligadura de trompas, la vasectomía, y la abstinencia. Okay, so these are just some recommendations. Well, we've covered what I wanted to in this lesson, stem changing verbs, irregular yo, looking at saber y conocer, and some family planning tips. Pues, muchas gracias, and don't forget to go over your ebook and do all the practice that'll help you learn this grammar. Muchas gracias. Adiós.